I'm Shannon.
And I'm Colleen.
And this is Pop Culture Pie, where we, two sisters, talk about pop culture, and one of us picks a topic, but the other does not know what the topic is prior to recording.
Surprises!
Yes, and today that one is me. I do not know what we're going to be talking about. So, Sissy, tell me, what is the topic today?
Today, we're serving a slice of Greek mythology.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It's very 180 from what we talked about last time.
Well, specifically,
more modern.
Greek mythology used in modern pop culture.
Okay, yeah.
And I have 3 specific examples.
Okay.
First, Disney's cartoon Hercules.
Mm-hmm.
Second, Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Did you ever see it?
No.
Shannon. Well, I planned
be
it.
very careful.
I planned it out in a way to do not to spoil the story.
Yeah.
Because people might not have seen it. I'm going to talk about basically what happens in the first 5 minutes, so it might spoil like the first 5 minutes, but it doesn't spoil the whole plot.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rick Riordan's Camp Half-Blood Chronicles.
Yay.
Yay. So, first, if there's anyone out there who doesn't know about Greek mythology, you should probably pause and go spend a few hours on Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. But my really quick rundown is that the Greek gods live on Mount Olympus. There are 12 main Olympians. The first is Zeus, the king of the gods and the god of the sky. Hera, the queen of the gods and the goddess of marriage. Poseidon, the god of the sea. Ares, the god of war. Hephaestus, the god of fire. Hermes, the god of travelers. Apollo, the god of music. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Athena, the goddess of wisdom. And Dionysus, the god of wine. The other 2 major gods that are not technically Olympians are Hades, who's the god of the dead, and Hestia, who is the goddess of the hearth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my boom quick intro.
Because Hestia was an Olympian.
Yes.
But then Dionysus made wine, and they all really liked that.
Yeah, depending on the story, Hestia had a throne, and she gave it up for Dionysus because she was really like, I don't care.
I like her.
Yeah, she seems pretty chill. She's like, I'm just going to sit here at the hearth, protect the hearth and the home. And like I named, they're the god of this. They were all the god of like 25,000 things.
Oh, yeah.
But
especially Hermes.
Yeah. Well, I read something I liked. It was like Hermes is the god of people who use roads. Like travelers, because it's like, oh, he's the god of messengers and thieves and travelers and like the color purple. I don't know, I made that up, but they've all got multiple things. So I gave like a basic, like this is their big thing. So Disney's Hercules is a great cartoon, and if you haven't watched it, you should pause and go watch it right now. I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. It's a really
giving a lot of homework.
I know. Homework is important, okay? You learn things at home.
I do a lot of homework then.
Yeah, because Wikipedia is great.
All I do is stuff at home.
Yeah. But I love Hercules. It's such a funny movie. And
it is.
It's, really completely historically inaccurate. Other than there was possibly a guy named Hercules. How historically accurate can you be about something that wasn't real? It was a myth, but...
Well, mythologically inaccurate.
Mythologically inaccurate? Yeah. So...
I'll let you talk.
Okay, you can talk too.
I was just going to say, because it should be Heracles.
That is my first bullet point.
Yeah.
Actually, I read his name wouldn't have even been Heracles.
Yeah.
It was like something else, like Achilles.
I think I've heard that.
And then he became known as Hercules. And that's the Greek name. And his Roman name, because all the gods have Greek names and Roman names. His Roman name is Hercules, but that's the name that has maintained popularity throughout history.
Yeah, whereas the Greek names of the gods have maintained more popularity than the Roman names. Although, but you still will have heard of the Roman names, like, I mean, everyone knows Pluto, that name.
Planets. Well, there are planets. We named all the planets after those ones, so,
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, his name in Greek was not Hercules. So right there, that's wrong. The other, like, big thing is that in the cartoon, his parents are Zeus and Hera, and Hera was not his mom. Mm-mm. Hera was, like, his mortal enemy. Like, in all the myths, it's Hera is trying to ruin Hercules' life.
I think it would have been interesting if the movie had gone that way. I know why they couldn't.
Because it's a family-friendly movie.
Yeah, you don't want to do, like, affairs and stuff, but it would have been really interesting if it had been Hera as the bad guy.
Yeah, because Hercules is a demigod, so he's got a god. Zeus is his father, and his mom was a mortal woman, who is, like, the name of his adoptive mom in the cartoon. Like, his adoptive parents in the cartoon are, like, his mortal parents, except they weren't poor.
Yeah.
They were, like, a princess and, like, a general.
Of course.
Yeah, because, they were all like that. Hercules was a descendant of the hero Perseus. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are things I learned. No, you were talking about the affairs, because really all the problems caused in ancient Greece are because Zeus went and slept with some girl.
Yeah.
That, like, he wasn't supposed to. And then Hera tries to torment, because the goddess of marriage, she doesn't have affairs, but Zeus is just horrible, and if he could just keep it in his pants. But I was rereading this mythology book I have that I remember reading as a kid, and it was funny, because when you read it, it's like, Zeus had lots of wives. And it calls, like, his girlfriends his wives. It's not just like, and then he raped some woman.
I mean, I guess that's the way to make it a little bit more family friendly without just erasing all of them. Because
really, you'd have hardly any Greek heroes if you were just like, Zeus never slept with anyone but Hera.
Yeah. I mean, what children does he have with Hera?
Ares.
Yeah.
And Hebe, who's the goddess of youth. I think Iris, the rainbow goddess, I think. And then different myths, it varies on Hephaestus, whether they had him together or Hera just had Hephaestus on her own.
Yeah.
Because when you're a god, you can do weird shit like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But of Olympians, they have two. And then pretty much the majority of the Olympians are either Zeus's siblings or his illegitimate children.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Those are the two choices.
Well, Aphrodite is kind of a special case.
Aphrodite was born from when the Titans cut up their father, the sky, and threw his body parts into the ocean. She was born from the foam.
So she was technically the first one.
Yes. She would be the oldest Olympian. Really, if you haven't read Greek myths, like, you think soap operas are crazy, you should read some Greek myths. People just have sex and kill things.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
It really is. But it's interesting, though, because really...
And Rick Riordan has built a family-friendly franchise off of it.
Great. We'll get to that. So...
Yes.
Hercules the cartoon.
The cartoon.
Is a great... So even though it is really nothing like the original myth of Hercules, it's a hilarious movie. And I wrote down, along with, like, things that are wrong, but I wrote down some of the great, like, jokes that are made that a kid would never understand, and even adults are gonna miss. But, like, if you really like Greek mythology, you will get them and you'll love them. So, like, first, when they're at, it's like the baby shower for Hercules. Mm-hmm. Hermes he brings flowers and he says, I let Orpheus do the arrangement.
Oh, yeah.
And Orpheus is a story of a hero who travels to the underworld to try to get his wife back. He fails because pretty much heroes don't really live happily ever after. That's not a thing.
No, even if you, like, live happily ever after in one story, there will be another story.
Where shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Except for, like, Perseus. Perseus lives happily ever after.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So then Hades shows up. Hades is the greatest villain ever. He's like the original sassy gay friend. The amount of sass that comes off him is awesome.
He's great.
He's great. And so he's the bad guy, but like he's not really, there aren't actually a lot of myths about Hades. Like,
yeah,
he's in things when people go to the underworld to try to accomplish something. He's there, but he doesn't really do a lot except for when
he's not really the bad guy.
No, except for when he kidnaps the girl who becomes his wife and stuff.
Yeah,
but other than that, yeah, he's not.
But
like
even
a bad
that,
guy.
like, Zeus told him to do it.
Yeah, he was like, Zeus, I love Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, and I'd like to marry her. And Zeus was like, you know what you should do? You should kidnap her. That's super romantic. Chicks dig that. And he was like...
It works for me all the time.
Yeah. And Hades was like, okay. So Hades is like, he's a gloomy character, but he's not evil. And his whole shtick is he wants to overthrow Zeus, which in the original myths, Hera, Poseidon, Apollo, and Athena once tried to overthrow Zeus.
It's good.
They tied him up. And, but some other, like a Titan or a nymph or something, I don't know, they saw Zeus and they untied him. And then, you know, he gave her babies and stuff, because that's what he does. Mm-hmm. So anyways, so Hades shows up, and one of the first great jokes he makes is he says, I haven't seen this much love in a room since Narcissus discovered himself.
I knew you were going to reference that one.
And then they show Narcissus, who is not a god and would not have been on Mount Olympus. But it's a great joke. Narcissus was this hunter, and he was cursed by a goddess to, you know, women loved him, but like he didn't love anybody. And so he was cursed to fall in love with his reflection, and he wasted away and died. And that's where the word narcissist comes from. So, but it's a great little joke, you know, and nobody laughs in the movie. It's like crickets are heard. And Hades is like, I haven't seen this much love in a room since Narcissus discovered himself. It's great. And then let's see, what else did I write down? Oh, Pegasus. Zeus gives Pegasus to Hercules. Mm-hmm. Pegasus was the child of Poseidon and Medusa. And when Perseus killed Medusa and chopped off her head, Pegasus busted from her severed neck.
Right.
Yep. That is the story of Pegasus.
That's not how they do it in the movie.
It's not. They make him out of clouds, and he's really cute.
That's very soft and sweet.
Yeah. So then, Hades. So then, you know, Hades goes to the underworld, and he's gloomy. And the Muses are the narrators of the story, and they're awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And I read something, it said they were like the first positive portrayal of African-American women in a cartoon, which is sad, but they're great.
When did Hercules come out?
Like 1990s, 1999, I want to say.
Yeah.
But they're great. And who would have thought you'd be like, we're going to retell this Greek myth with gospel music.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the best things about the movie.
Yeah, they're great. And the songs in the movie are great.
1997.
1997. The songs in the movie. So there's 5 muses in the movie. There are 9 muses in mythology. Mm-hmm. But like they use the names. They don't say their names, but like there's names in like the cast list, and they are names of muses. And They're awesome. So, they sing a moody song. So
Do you want to explain what the muses are in myths?
That's a good point, Shannon.
Yeah.
The muses are the goddesses of the arts. So, one of them is the goddess of tragedy, and one is the goddess of comedy, and one is the goddess of lyric poetry, and one is the goddess of epic poetry, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. One of them is the mother of Orpheus, though I don't remember which one.
It's kind of like they're all gods, but it's like how in modern day with Catholicism we have saints.
Sort of, yeah. There's the 12 main Olympians, and then there are lots of minor gods.
Yeah, and even the Zeus isn't God in the way that we think of God in modern day.
No, because the gods were very human. They made mistakes. They were not all-knowing. They had challenges and affairs, and it was a way to explain the world around you. Why was there an earthquake? Well, the gods were angry.
Yeah. And there were creation myths.
Yeah.
And stuff, but it wasn't this god looked down and was like, I'm going to create Earth. It was other things.
Yes, the Titan Prometheus and his brother sculpted mankind out of clay.
Yes.
That was the first race of humans, because then Zeus decided humans sucked, and he flooded the earth, and 2 humans survived, happens.
Because everything has a flood myth.
Truth. Because obviously at some point, stuff flooded. And so they threw stones behind their backs, and the stones became the next race of humans. And they were sturdier than the clay humans.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That sounds right.
So, I reread a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
The entire Percy Jackson series as well. So
that's where I get most of my myth information. So
right. Well, of the 3 of these, Percy Jackson is amazingly accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really the myths are. I mean, because they already happened. It's not like you're retelling them. But we're gonna get to that.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
Pain and Panic are Hades' sidekicks.
Yes.
And they're these little inept demons. They're based on Fear and Panic, who were children of Ares and Aphrodite.
Okay.
So they were not Hares's. I made a new one.
Hades's.
Hades. They were not Hades minions, but they're great characters. They're hysterical. And then you see the Fates. Mm-hmm. The sharing of the eye is not actually a trait of the Fates. It's these other 3 old women characters, the Grey sisters.
Right.
Who all share an eye. They share one eye and they share one tooth, and they pass them around. But it's so cool that they portray them as old women with one eye and not,
Yeah. And other than that, it's a pretty accurate portrayal of the Fates.
With the string and the cutting scissors and,
And they're just kind of funny old
They
ladies.
are funny. Everyone's funny in this movie. It's great.
Yeah.
They talk about knowing the past, present, and future, and one of them is indoor plumbing. It's gonna be big. And then they're gonna make Hercules mortal with this potion, and then Pain and Panic turn into snakes to kill mortal Hercules' baby. So in the original myth, Hera sends 2 snakes to kill Hercules as a baby. Mm-hmm. But he chokes them and ties them in a knot, pretty much like how he does in the cartoon. So then, Hercules grows up.
The movie made up a whole reason for why Hercules is a demigod and not just a god.
He drinks this potion except for the last drop. So he's mortal, but he retains his godlike strength. Yeah. But in the myth, he's just half god, which makes you a demigod, which usually basically means you are mortal, but you have some sort of superpower. Yeah, you're a mythological superhero. That's basically what the heroes of myth are. Totally true. So as we go on, I wrote like less of like what's wrong and more of like what things allude to in the myth. Because I mean, the movie is not the myth of Hercules. It's really not, but it's hilarious.
No, it's just got allusions to the
myths. So I did read. I like, you know, you see Hercules as a teenager, and there are kids who are like playing frisbee, but it's like a discus throw, which was an Olympic game. Philoctetes, who's his satyr mentor, is not a satyr mentor character in myth. Philoctetes is like another Greek hero prince who's like a friend of Hercules. And he inherits Hercules' bow and arrow when Hercules dies.
I don't think I knew that.
I didn't know that either, except that I'd never heard of a satyr called Philoctetes, except in the movie. So I was like, what that's about? So then a great joke, Phil does things where he's like, you know, my answer's 2 words, I am retired. And Hercules is like counting on his fingers, like, what? So I am retired would be 2 words in Greek.
Yeah, because I am would be 1 word.
Yeah, so that's a cool thing. So then
languages do it.
They go in and Phil's like, I've trained every hero, and he names like every hero in Greek mythology. But of course, some of these in the theoretical timeline of ancient Greece would come after Hercules, and some come before Hercules. Like Hercules is a descendant of Perseus. Hercules hits his head on the mast of the Argo, which when Jason sails the Argo around the Mediterranean on his whole quest, Hercules is actually on the ship with him. He mentions Achilles, and he talks about Achilles' heel. So Achilles' mom like held him over. No, she like dunked him in the river Styx.
Yeah.
Which made him invincible except for his heel, because that's what she was holding on to him. So then he was a hero at the Trojan War, but he was shot in the heel and he died. So then, you know, Hercules has a great training montage.
Training montages are very important.
They sing a great song.
Yes.
All the songs are great. So then they fly off to go to Thebes. And they stop because they hear a girl screaming. And we meet Megara, who's the sassiest heroine ever. She's made of sass, and she's great. So Megara, in the mythology, was a Theban princess. So Hercules saves Thebes, and he's given Megara as his wife, and they have 2 kids. And then because Hera hates him, she like makes him go crazy, and he kills. In some stories, he kills his wife and his children, and in some stories, he just kills his children.
Yeah, well.
So then
no sequel to this movie, though.
No. So then he goes and to pay penance for having murdered his children, even though he was made to do it by Hera because she's evil. She's not really evil. I feel bad for Hera. Her husband sucked. I mean, the poor woman.
Well, you know, and the whole him paying penance, even though like it was Hera's fault, like. That's like Hera punishes all of these mortal children and women, even though it's Zeus's fault, because you can't punish a god.
You can't punish the gods, so you
even
punish
if you
the
are
kids,
a god,
because it's not their fault. So then Hercules does the 12 labors of Hercules, which are like the 12 things he does that really make him really famous, and we'll get back to that. So Megara is being held hostage by a giant blue centaur, who Hades later refers to as the river guardian. And Megara calls him Nessus. So Nessus, in the original Hercules myth, is a centaur. He's not a river guardian. He just happens to be by a river. And Hercules is with his 2nd, 3rd, or 4th wife. It depends on what story you read as to how many wives he had. But his final wife. And the centaur says he'll carry the wife across the river for him. Of course, then he kidnaps the wife. Hercules shoots an arrow and kills him. But before the centaur dies, he tells the wife, if you're ever worried that Hercules is not going to be faithful, smear my blood on his shirt and that'll make him be faithful. Of course, he was lying and his blood was poisonous. So at some point, the wife smears his blood on Hercules' shirt, and then that is how Hercules dies.
Very not a superheroic death.
No. But on his death, like when he dies, Hercules is made into a god.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So, he rescues Meg, who's made of sass, and then you find out she's working for Hades, and they're just like the sass king and queen. So then the next thing I wrote that I love is Hercules goes to rescue two little boys, which are in fact Pain and Panic, and they say, call IXII, which are the Roman numerals for 911.
It's a good one.
It's like they make these jokes and you're like, no kid is going to understand that.
Yeah.
Like even an adult might miss that, but it's just a great little like, call IXII.
And they make so many references, like not that joke, but they make so many jokes and references that you do know they did actually like do their research and then just chose to ignore stuff.
Yeah.
Which is fine, I guess.
But it's
fine. Funny.
I mean, I always wonder about the meeting when someone went, let's take the Hunchback of Notre Dame and make it into a kid's movie. But everyone will live instead of dying. Who thought that was a good idea? Hunchback of Notre Dame has amazing music.
Well, even just
Still
being like,
rude.
let's take Hercules and turn it into a kid's cartoon.
It's a really famous story. So then you have the Hercules fights the Hydra. So killing the Hydra was one of his 12 labors.
It's a pretty cool scene in the movie.
It is a cool scene. And it's a computer-generated scene. Mm-hmm. So it's part of the, one of the original computer-generated sequences in cartoons. In the myth, you have to burn the stump of the Hydra's neck before the heads grow back.
Okay.
Because if you cut off the head of a Hydra, two more grow back. Hail Hydra. So in the cartoon, he ends up crushing it with rocks. But that's one of his. And so then you have another montage of Hercules fighting monsters. And they sing another awesome song. Zero to Hero.
It's got some good songs.
It really has, all of its songs are really great.
Yeah.
You know what I realized though? Hades doesn't have a song.
That's true.
Because most cartoons,
That's weird.
The villain sings a song.
Yeah.
And he doesn't sing a song. Hercules and Meg also don't sing a duet.
Yeah.
Because usually like the love song is the two, the male and female sing a duet. But in Hercules, Megra just sings her song by herself.
I wonder why
it has
they
a
didn't give
narrator.
Hades.
I don't know. It has a narrator, which most movies don't have, and the narrator theoretically sings the most of the songs the muses do. But they sing Zero to Hero, and that's a great song. So in the montage, you see him fight a boar, which was one of the 12 labors, a lion, which was a 12 labor, and a bird. And a 12 labor, he had to fight lots of birds, but he fights the birds. You also see the Minotaur and Medusa, who are not things that Hercules fights in the myths, but they are mythological things.
And they're pretty famous.
Yeah.
And then you see him at the end of the montage, he wears the lion skin.
Yeah. Something happens before that, though.
Okay.
Before we get to that, you see him and Pegasus are putting their hands in pavement, like at the Chinese theater.
Oh, yeah.
But you see Hades is talking, and he's upset, and he's talking about weaknesses. Yeah. And he says, for Pandora, it was the box thing, and the Trojans, they bet on the wrong horse. So that refers to Pandora. This is the story of Pandora's box, which wouldn't have been a box, it would have been a jar. But that doesn't roll off the tongue.
Well, I think it was a mistranslation at some point. Right.
So Pandora, and so I reread the story of Pandora. Pandora was like created by the gods to be curious, to punish Prometheus's brother because Prometheus gave fire to the humans.
Yeah, because she was like the first woman, wasn't she? At least in a version of it.
In a version of the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's told not to open this jar. So, of course, she opens the jar and it releases all the horrors of humanity, like grief and misery and old age and sickness and blah, blah, blah. But she closes it before hope can escape. So humans will always keep hope.
They should make that a movie.
Then the Trojan horse is in the Trojan War. The Greeks are fighting the Trojans, and the Greeks act like they're all leaving, and they leave this wooden horse on the beach, and the Trojans bring it inside, but the Greeks are hiding inside the horse, and then they come out and they kill everybody. Well. So then you see Hercules in his new mansion because he's rich and stuff, and he has a lion over him. And Hercules is famous for the Nemean lion that he kills. The lion's skin was like impenetrable.
Yeah.
So he's famous for wearing a lion skin and carrying a club.
Yeah, it's like his thing.
Yeah, that's what he's wearing the lion.
We don't have him carry a club in the movie.
No, he uses a sword in the movie. So he's got that lion on. The lion is also Scar from The Lion King.
Yes.
That's what's over top of him. And Phil is reading off like a list of stuff that he's got to go do. And he mentions you got to clean King Aegeus's stables. And that was one of the 12 labors. And then it says, and then you got to get some girdle from an Amazon. And that is one of the labors. And we will talk more about the Amazons later. Mm-hmm. So then Meg comes and they, play hooky, and they're walking through a park, and he's like, we went and we did this, and then that play, that Oedipus thing, I thought I had problems. And Oedipus is the story of a guy who he kills his dad and marries his mom. He doesn't know that they're his parents when this happens.
Everyone should go watch the web series that I co-created called Eddie Rex, which is a retelling of Oedipus in a modern-day high school.
Ew.
It's very funny. It is the funniest thing I have ever made. It's only 25 minutes long.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and we're basically just making fun of Oedipus.
It's a pretty intense story.
He does not have kids with his mom in ours.
Because, he has kids with his mom. And
yeah.
So anyways, he and Meg are on a date. So then he skips a rock and he breaks the arms off a statue, which is the famous statue of Venus de Milo, and which has no arms. And then I don't know what my next note means. Just say, see the other major gods. And I'm like, what is that? What am I talking about?
Well, do you see them as statues?
Oh, no. It's so Hades releases the Titans to take over from Zeus. So the Titans were not like in the movie. It's like a tornado and an Iceman and a lava
they're
monster.
like natural disaster type things.
In the myths, the Titans were human-like creatures.
They were like the gods.
Yeah, they were like the race
precursor
of gods before the gods. But they were, awful. And Zeus overthrew his father, just as his father had overthrown his father. Mm-hmm. And Zeus was concerned that one day maybe a child would try to overthrow him. Yeah, so he releases the Titans, which are these, like, monsters. There is a myth about, like, a storm monster. Typhon. Mm-hmm. But so you see the other major gods fighting these monsters, and, they lose.
Yeah.
But then Hercules comes and he saves the day. But then Meg dies. Because of reasons.
That's unfortunate.
So then he goes to visit Hades to get Meg back, and he rides the three-headed dog Cerberus. And so getting Cerberus was one of the 12 labors. Mm-hmm. And, he gets Meg back, and because he was willing to sacrifice his life for Meg, he becomes a god and goes up to Mount Olympus. which is not what happens in the myth because he dies and is made god upon his death. He's the god of manly strength. And
then I guess he just chills in Olympus after that.
Yeah. Well,
there's no stories about him as a god.
No, unless you read the Percy Jackson series.
Well, yeah.
And they make a constellation, and there's a constellation of Hercules in real life. So, but he chooses to remain immortal so he can live with Meg, and in the sequel he goes crazy and murders her.
Aww.
Not really. It's a great movie. It's hilarious, and
there is a TV show.
They did make a TV show
in
which there's a lot more allusions to Greek myths. His best friends are Icarus and Cassandra. Icarus is the son of Daedalus, who they had wax wings and he flew too close to the sun. So he dies in the myth, but in the cartoon he's alive. And Cassandra was a seer who was cursed that no one would ever believe her. And she told the future. And there's like a prince in that who's like a prince from something. You know, there's a lot more allusions to Greek myth. I think they also meet Aladdin at some point.
Yeah, I think so. There's a crossover.
Yeah. So it's a great cartoon, but they do some great allusions to the real myth and make great jokes. You know, I love IXII and like, I haven't seen this much love in a room since Narcissus discovered himself. And it's really funny.
So, if you want to learn about the myths, it's not the best place to go.
No.
But it is really funny and it's a good movie.
It's a really funny movie. It's one of my favorite Disney movies, you know. It's not like one of the most popular, but it's really one of my favorites.
I watched this video. It's a video essay by Lindsay Ellis called Hercules, Disney's Beautiful Hot Mess, a video essay. And it talks about how it's like not the most basically thematically consistent movie. Like, and just that it like shouldn't be a good movie. But it's still really fun, and so who cares? It's like a 37-minute long video, but it was really interesting, and she's just really funny. But it is like you watch it and you're like, okay, yeah, I guess that doesn't make sense, but I like it anyway.
But it's magic, so...
Yeah.
I like the muses and they sing cool songs.
Yeah.
And Meg is a great song. It's a great movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
Yes.
You should also read about Greek mythology, because it's also great.
What are we going to talk about next?
Wonder Woman.
Yes.
So mostly for Wonder Woman, I'm just going to talk about the Amazons.
Yeah. And the movie, not comics.
I do have some written down about comics.
Yeah.
I'm going to say right now that I don't read comic books, but I read a lot of Wikipedia.
Yeah, we were never comic book people.
No, but I read a lot of Wikipedia, and I like comic book movies. And I like to understand movies and understand all the little references. So I'll watch videos about the movies and then go to Wikipedia and read more. We're really, really Ravenclaws. Just want to know about things.
We won't go through the effort to just read the comics.
No.
But we'll learn everything about them.
Comics are complicated.
Well, and I think that just something about the format, I can't get into it. Like, me personally, it's just not like the format of comics doesn't engage me the way a book or a movie would.
I like books. So, Wonder Woman.
Yes.
First, we'll talk a little bit about the Amazons. The Amazons were a warrior tribe of women that were somewhere in the Middle East.
Yes.
The gods that they honored, their like two main gods were Ares and Artemis, which are kind of like the opposite of each other. But Ares is the god of war and Artemis is the goddess of the hunt and the goddess of like women. Although Artemis was all about being a virgin and just basically not interacting with men. Mm-hmm. But the Amazons, there were no men in their tribe. They would mate with a tribe of men once a year, and they would keep the girls, and they would send the boys to that tribe of men.
It's a good system.
Yeah, why not? Boys suck.
Yeah.
There's a story that they conquered Atlantis. The Argonauts passed their island in the stories of Jason. One of the most famous is Queen Hippolyta, and she had a magic girdle that was a gift from her father Ares. The ninth labor of Hercules is to go get this girdle. She meets him, he goes, and she comes out to talk to him. And she is willing to give the girdle to him because she thinks he's cool. But Hera tricks the Amazons into thinking that Hercules is going to kidnap Hippolyta. So then they attack. So then Hercules does accidentally kill Hippolyta. In some stories, it depends. He kills her, but takes the girdle. Then the Theseus, who's another Greek hero, he abducts either Hippolyta or her sister Antiope. And in some stories marries her, but they have a son, Hippolytus. And then the Amazons come fight Athens to get her back. And whoever it is, Hippolyta or Antiope, ends up dead. So in the comics, usually every once in a while they reboot the universe, which means that there are multiple origin stories for superheroes. So in the original Wonder Woman comics, the Amazons, it's more their traditional myth. They're these warrior women. Hercules is someone teases him that, hey, you can't fight an Amazon, so he decides to conquer them. Since Hippolyta cannot lose because of her magic girdle, which is a gift from Aphrodite, she defeats Hercules, and Hercules is cool, I surrender, let's have a party. So then he steals the girdle and he takes the Amazons as slaves. Hippolyta prays to the goddesses for help. She's able to get the girdle back. They defeat all the men. They sail away to Paradise Island because men are the worst. And so they're we forget about men. Hippolyta at some point decides she wants a daughter, and she sculpts Diana from clay, and the gods bring her to life. And later, Diana grows up, and there's a competition to be named Wonder Woman, and she competes to be the Wonder Woman, and she gets it, and goes into the world and stuff. So then in the next reboot of the universe, the Amazons were created by the goddesses of the Olympian goddesses from souls of women who had died at the hands of men. So they're women reborn.
Okay.
And then the same sort of Hercules story. Hercules decides to conquer them, steals the girdle, takes them as slaves. And when Hippolyta prays to, I think it's Athena, she is told, Athena's I will help you, but you can't retaliate. So of course they do. And their punishment is to be sent to the island of Themyscira, where they are to guard Doom's doorway, which is this doorway that leads to a realm of monsters. Antiope, her sister, Hippolyta's sister, decides to stay behind with half the Amazons because they're no, let's keep killing the men. And they create their own different tribe, and that's a whole story. And Diana is, again, she's been blessed with gifts from the gods, so it's she has the speed of Artemis and the beauty of Aphrodite and whatever. Then, so in the new 52 timeline, Diana's a demigod, daughter of Zeus. And they still have the sculpted from clay story, but that's what Hippolyta told Diana, so she wouldn't know.
Okay.
So then we get to the movie.
Yes.
So the movie starts with, it's been a few weeks now, but at some point, basically, little Diana is Mom, Hippolyta, they're on the island of Themyscira, tell me a story. So this is basically just the story that she tells her, which is the origin story that they give. The god Ares thought that people were naturally evil. So he whispered in the ears of men, and men started to fight and blah, blah, blah. They're awful. So the Amazons are created by the gods to bring peace to the world of men. But Ares is like, no, men are evil. So Ares kills all the gods until he is struck down by Zeus. Okay. But like Zeus's dying, wish, whatever, is like he sends the Amazons off to this island and he leaves a god killer with them for the day because Ares lives. And so it's like whenever Ares rises again, the Amazons will have this god killer to defeat him.
So they went for Ares as a bad guy.
Yes. And in this part of the story that Hippolyta is telling Diana, she's like, and I wanted a daughter, so I sculpted you from clay. Okay. Now, like in what I read in Wikipedia about the comics, like Ares is often a villain in the comic books. Mm-hmm. But like,
that makes sense.
This whole like Ares killed all the gods. I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting.
I think Ares makes more sense as a villain than Hades.
The thing with like Hades gets into like the jealousy.
Yeah.
Because in the original myth,
just him being associated with like death and stuff.
Yeah, death is spooky. Ares is like the god of war and he's like, let's fight shit.
Yeah.
So like the big difference is the role of Ares, and I don't want to, give away the movie or anything.
Yes.
I went into the movie knowing who was playing Ares.
Yeah.
So, like, I knew who Ares was the whole time.
Yeah.
I saw it with my husband, and he didn't. So he got to experience the cool twist when he, like, found out, but I knew the whole time. So I was just waiting.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, when are we going to find out? I think I knew. I think it made a good twist, but
yeah, I don't know.
You don't know. It was a good movie. If you haven't seen it, I tried really. I didn't really spoil anything except for the story Hippolyta tells Diana in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's an interesting how they use the Amazons as a like device to create this warrior woman, which is cool.
Yeah.
I read a cool article recently that was talking about Wonder Woman's outfit. And it talked about, like Wonder Woman's original outfit. She's like basically in this like swimsuit.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's ridiculous. And you look at all, she's wearing these ridiculous outfits. But in the movie, what the Amazons wear is really based on ancient Greek armor.
Okay.
Like leather armor, but armor. Yeah. You see different, you're on the Amazon island and you see different women in different outfits, and they're really in these armor-like outfits. And even what Diana wears when she like becomes Wonder Woman, whatever, is more armor looking. And it's like the way the leather is laid and stuff creates like the design of her outfit. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's like brightly colored and stuff. But even like the shortness of her skirt is like explained because she's, they fight. And like she goes to, this doesn't really give anything away. Obviously we know that she leaves the island and goes off with Captain Kirk. And he's trying to like dress her like a normal person, and he's putting her in these long skirts, and she's like, how do I fight in this? And she's like trying to do kicks and stuff. And they're like, you don't stop. So it's like, okay, she's got this short skirt that looks like the sorts of skirts that people, they wore with armor. And it's because she needs to be able to move.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, her boots they aren't boots. They are greaves, like shin armor. Mm-hmm. And she's not like her boots are wedges that are like high-heeled for whatever reason. But they're not like stiletto heels or something stupid. Like, she's in wedges, and she has her, bracelet things, but they're like forearm armor pieces. Mm-hmm. So it's very like, armor based. And I read an article, of a costume designer who talked about it, and she's like, I love this because you're watching it and you're like, that is based on armor. It's not based on lingerie like so many female superhero costumes are.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Well, and, just like, I don't know about, like, the island that they live on, but, like, Greece wasn't a cold place.
No.
It was pretty warm in the grand scheme of things. So it makes sense to not be wearing, like, a bunch of clothes.
Yeah. And, the island they live on looks like, Greece looking. And, yeah, so it's like, they wouldn't have been clothed in lots of stuff. You take that into account. Like, in ancient Egypt, the fabric they wore was, like, see-through.
Yeah.
It wasn't a modesty thing. It was to protect your body from sand.
Yeah.
Because it was hot. Like, but you'd never see that in a movie.
No.
There's modesty levels. So without giving anything away, that's my basics about the Amazons. It's a cool story, And it's cool that even in these ancient cultures, they had these warrior women stories. Mm-hmm. Women are cool and we should. And it's really sad that, like, it took this long to make a Wonder Woman movie. But it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
And you don't feel stupid.
Even though I haven't seen it, I'm very glad that it has done well. And that people like it.
You really wanted it to succeed, because or else people would be like, see, nobody wants to see a female superhero.
Yeah. And it's stupid. Like, no, we really do. We really do.
We really do. It's a good movie, and they do a good job, balancing her. She's this warrior woman, but, like, she's really naive. She's lived on this island her whole life. Mm-hmm. But at the same sort of time, there are things, like, at one point on the island, she sees Chris Pine naked. She's, like, really unperturbed. She's like, oh, yeah, I've read a book about that. He's really embarrassed. She's kind of like, whatever. I mean, she's like, are you an average man? And he's like, no, I'm an above average. He's like, well, yeah, well, no. There are some really great moments. And it's great, her, like, growth as, like, this is the world. And, she's really like, I will go and I will defeat Ares and everything will be fine. The war will just stop. Because it takes place during World War I.
It's like, we've talked about this and people have said this, that it's kind of like Captain America and Thor mixed together.
Yeah.
It's a period movie about someone learning to function in the real world because they're used to their godly-ish world.
Yeah. So it's a good movie, and I'm really glad that it's done really well. And it's being successful because you want it to be successful because you want people to continue making female superhero movies. Next we'll have, in the Marvel Universe, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yes. And then Captain Marvel.
Yes.
So
that would be very good.
Because other than that, women who've, like, headlined movies have been awful, like the Elektra movie and the Catwoman movie. So bad. They're really bad movies.
I haven't seen either of those, but I've heard that they're really bad.
I have.
Well, and I wonder,
they were bad.
Like, if there's something with those movies where people just didn't put in as much effort because they just already thought that it would fail. But I don't know.
Because they gave Catwoman, like, a weird backstory, and it was weird. Like, now again, I don't read comic books, so I don't know if, like, Catwoman has secret cat powers. From everything I'd ever seen in movies, she was just a cat burglar. She gets, like, magic cat powers, and it's very weird. Maybe I haven't seen Elektra. I don't know. The Daredevil movie wasn't that successful, so why they were like, let's make a spinoff, I don't know. And also, since Elektra would theoretically not be white, but that's a whole other problem.
Yeah.
So, my next thing is
my favorite thing.
Rick Riordan's books, which are
pretty
apparently
sure it's pronounced Riordan.
Rick Riordan's books.
Yes.
Which all together are apparently called the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles. I looked this up.
Okay.
So he has Percy Jackson and the Olympians, a series of 5 books. The Heroes of Olympus is a series of 5 books, and then the Trials of Apollo, which there are so far 2 books.
And then all those little mini...
Yeah, and he's got little
spin-off
tie-in books
things.
with short stories.
Today I bought the Camp Half-Blood Confidential. I think that's what it's called.
And Rick Riordan has also written books about Norse mythology and
which are
Egyptian
very
mythology.
good. Which are okay.
Yeah. So, the basic rundown of these... I didn't write... Like, the other things I wrote pages about, I didn't write anything down about this because you've read all these books too, so I figured it would be more of like
and I think if you started to write stuff down, like, we could do a whole podcast talking about one Percy Jackson book.
You could talk about one Percy Jackson book. So basically, and you know, people just call them the Percy Jackson books because he's the main character in the first series and he's in the second series, and so it's an easy way to call him.
Yeah.
Don't watch the movies. Read the books, but don't watch the movies.
Well, I was just talking about this the other night. At least the first movie is a good movie, completely separate from the books. It's a decent movie, but it's a very, very bad adaptation. And the Percy Jackson books could have been adapted into a really good, really funny movie.
They could have.
But the movie's, like, too serious.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the right, like, energy.
Or the right story.
Yeah, and I remember, I remember after seeing the movie with Mom bringing up the scene in the books. If you haven't read the book, this isn't, like, a spoiler, but the Mount Olympus is above the Empire State Building in modern day. It's not a physical mountain. It's just like the godly place of Mount Olympus. And so they take an elevator up to Mount Olympus. They take the Empire State Building elevator. And there's just like elevator music playing. And it's just kind of this like normal thing, but it's really funny because they're going up to Mount Olympus.
On floor 600.
Yeah. And in the and it's just this like, it's that little detail of, like, this is so ridiculous. We're going to Mount Olympus and we're just taking an elevator. But in the movie, it's, like, this super fast elevator and whatever, and it's really dramatic. And it's, like, you could have done something really funny, but instead you tried to make this whole movie, like, serious.
Yeah.
I mean, there are funny moments in the movie.
But they are really
cute, but
they're funny books. But so the basic rundown of the books is the Greek gods have like moved around with Western civilization. Their essence is tied into Western civilization. So the headquarters of Western civilization is now America. So Mount Olympus is on the 600th floor of the Empire State Building. The entrance to the underworld is in Los Angeles.
In a record store?
In a record store.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the gods still run around and have illegitimate babies with mortals. So the main character, Percy Jackson, finds out that he's the son of Poseidon.
And that's what you gotta love about Rick Riordan, is he went, I'm gonna adapt the myths, and I'm not gonna go the Disney Hercules route of completely avoiding illegitimate children and gods having affairs. I'm going to have that be what happens.
That is necessary.
And it's still a children's book.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's kind of the crux of the whole series, is like, the gods are crappy parents.
They are, and that is a really important
That's
part.
like
the gods are crappy
point.
parents, and the gods won't really do anything to solve problems. They just make heroes, demigods, go around and do things for them. Like, they have to go on quests to save stuff when you're sort of like, couldn't you as a god just like pop over there and take care of that?
Yeah.
No, that's just not how things are done. And so they have to go on quests. And so they do sort of like redo quests that happen in ancient Greek mythology, because what he explains is that monsters don't stay dead.
They regenerate.
Yeah, you kill them and they disintegrate, and it might take hundreds of years for them to like reform, but they will reform eventually. So like in the first book, Percy kills Medusa and the Minotaur.
Yeah.
You know, in the second book, they go look for the Golden Fleece, which is Jason and the Argonauts' whole quest.
And it's a very clever way of incorporating all of these classic things. Unfortunately, that means in Heroes of Olympus, he used up everything that you've heard of. And sometimes in Heroes of Olympus, he stretches stuff. Yeah. And he brings back, like, Hercules and heroes like that through this whole thing that ultimately, like, makes sense, but, like...
Yeah, but it's, you know, people from mythology, like, so in the second series, mortals, because you mostly just meet monsters and stuff and immortals in the first series. So in the second series, there's a reason that mortals are coming back from the dead. So you're able to meet these different heroes or bad guys and, you know, have to deal with them. And they meet
But
Hercules,
it's just not as effective as, like, the monsters and the gods.
No, but it's, you know, trying to work in these different stories. But, like, we talked about Achilles with Hercules. Percy they call it the mark of Achilles. He bathes in the river Styx to become unbeatable, you know, except for the small of his back. And, you know, they redo those things. You know, they have to go to the underworld, which heroes do multiple times. And, you know, they meet the gods.
Worth mentioning that the, like, reason that Rick Riordan wrote these books was his son... At least one of his sons, he has two, has dyslexia and ADHD. I believe both of those. So it's not like a huge thing, especially in the books now, but like it starts as very much being like, here's a really cool reason why a kid has dyslexia and ADHD. It's because they're a child of a god, and the dyslexia is... your brain is hardwired to read ancient Greek, and the ADHD is your brain is hardwired to fight battles. And so it's this very nice thing to address, like, these disabilities that can be very hard for children. And
I didn't remember how much, like, especially in the first series, like, especially in the first book, and it gets less and less, where, like, Percy just can't read signs. People have to read signs for him. And, you see, like, these scrambled up letters that Percy sees, but he's dyslexic. So he's like, oh, my God, this red cursive neon sign, I don't know what it says. But it smells like food, so let's go in there.
Yeah. Which I think it's kind of unfortunate that isn't as big of a thing in the books anymore. But it's still addressed sometimes.
They're not reading signs as often.
Yeah.
You know, it is interesting too, like the first book, I mean, Percy is 12.
Yeah.
He goes on this, you know, life or death adventure, and he's 12, so...
Because they're children's books.
Yeah.
Like, they're not even young adult books. They are children's books.
Well, at least they started children. I mean, they got long.
Well, yeah. It's like Harry Potter, where
they just got, like, you grow up with it.
But I think, like, at least the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series... as a whole, like, is very children's series. But he does a very good job of addressing the very adult themes of mythology.
Yeah, like sex and violence.
But for children.
Yeah.
Which is important to do. It's important to not just, like, pretend these things don't exist when talking to children. So.
These are, you know, real things. And, you know, it's like, and it talks a lot about sort of absent parents and growing up with one parent. Maybe my parent got remarried and I don't think that step-parent likes me. And, you know, how do you deal with that? I mean, it's like with most things, you know, you make problems into monsters and stuff that you can solve, but it's a way of you know, talking about stuff that kids deal with. And so, you know, they're young but I want to go to summer camp where you learn how to fight monsters.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds awesome.
It would be nice.
I was thinking about it, Shannon, and I think that you would be a child of Hypnos, the god of sleep. Because I reread all the books. I decided that in order to prepare for this, that I would just have to reread this entire series. So I'm on the last one, The Blood of Olympus, which is the last book of the second series, The Heroes of Olympus. And they talk about
the second series, by the way, gets into the Roman versions.
Yes, you do. And that is an interesting thing, too. It gets into, like, the differences between the Greek and Roman versions of the gods, because while they're still the gods of the same sort of things, they are different. They talk a lot about Athena. Like, she's the goddess of wisdom and warfare in Greek. So, like, Greek war strategy. And she's not in Roman. It's much more like she's the goddess of arts and crafts.
Like, Apollo is the same in both, right?
But, yes. But in Roman, he's also the god of the sun.
Yes.
And Artemis is the goddess of the moon. Whereas in the Greek, there's a titan of the moon and a titan of the sun, and they drive like the sun and moon chariots.
Yeah.
And they get into that a little bit in the books. They talk about, you know, like Apollo gives them a ride in the sun, which he changes into a school bus. And he says that, like, oh, well, it's because, you know, no one really believed in the titan Helios anymore, so he faded, and then now I'm in charge of the sun.
Yeah. Which that also falls apart a little bit when, again, he runs out of the famous gods and monsters and stuff.
More like gods. I really like Greek mythology, but you start to meet minor gods I've never heard of, and you're like, okay, well then how do they still exist?
Yeah. Because it's like a pretty major thing in the first series that, like, gods fade out of existence eventually.
Yeah, but I do like in the third series, Trials of Olympus, the Trials of Apollo.
Yes.
They meet, like, Roman emperors would declare themselves as gods sometimes. So then it's like, okay, well, so some of them are alive. And I love one of them says something about, like, he's like, I love Wikipedia. I'm going to live forever.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm on Wikipedia, so people can continue to learn about me. And as long as people know that I existed, I will continue to live.
Yes.
So, you know. But they're really, you know, it's cool. It's these kids, and they're half mortal and half god, and they go to this summer camp where they're trained by Chiron, who's the half centaur, who in mythology trains heroes, and they go on quests. You know, they go through the labyrinth in, you know, the Minotaur myth. Mm-hmm. They meet Daedalus. They go to the underworld. They go to Olympus. You know, eventually in the second series, they go to Rome and Greece, sailing on the Argo II.
It's a way to... It's just a really good series because it can address all of these things that, like, most people don't talk about with kids that they do need to know about. It also is, like, learning myths, teaching kids myths, which is also teaching them history.
Yeah.
And it's very mythologically and historically accurate, like, pretty much as accurate as it can be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are things that are changed to, you know, work together better, and eventually, not in the first couple books, he has a glossary in the back.
Yeah.
So you can look up the different gods and, like, the different Greek and Roman terms, which you can almost always figure out in context.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's helpful. You can flip back. Like, they might be like, and then we saw this person who you met a couple books ago, and if you read these as they came out and, like, years have passed, you're like, who was that?
Yeah, they're like, oh, last year. And I'm like, that was 10 years ago.
I don't remember that.
Well, and he came out with his own versions of the myths, basically.
Those are great books. Let's talk about those.
Yes.
So
I have not actually read the Heroes one.
I've read them both. They're great. So
I know.
There are all these series, you know, whatever, and you meet the gods and you meet heroes and whatever. So then he published these books. You know, Percy Jackson's The Greek Gods and Percy Jackson's Greek Heroes. And it's the stories of the Greek gods and the stories of the Greek heroes narrated by Percy Jackson, who is the main character and main narrator of the first series.
And he's a hilarious narrator.
Mm-hmm. So he tells these stories, and it's really great. I think it would be a really great way to sort of read the myths for the first time.
Yeah, which I think was his point. Like,
yeah. So, you know, he tells the stories.
It's an accessible way.
For the Greek gods, it's basically those main 14 gods I mentioned, the Olympians plus Hades and Hestia. And I guess they talk about Persephone too.
Yeah.
She's really integral in the story, the one story that there is about Hades. But
because it's not actually Hades' story. It's actually Demeter's story, but everyone knows of it as Hades.
I think that's how they tell it, as Demeter's story.
Yeah.
But, so he tells these stories, but he makes it sound really modern. So, like, in Ares' man cave, where he had HD TV, and Hephaestus made everybody thrones that had wheels on them.
Yeah.
And, you're grounded, and I'm going to take away your Xbox, and they talk in very modern, of very modern voices, and they talk about modern things. They'll make jokes, too, about, if an Xbox was invented, I would take yours away.
It's so good.
And then in the Greek heroes, the same sort of things. He tells, the big ones, like Hercules and Theseus and Perseus and Jason. And he does tell stories, that are less well-known. And I noticed I've been rereading the series.
Yeah.
That some of the less well-known ones are things that are mentioned in the books.
Yeah.
So, they meet Cupid, who's the Roman form of Eros. And so there's a story in the Greek heroes, and he mentions his wife, who was immortal. So they tell her story in the Greek heroes book, which was a story that I recognized, but didn't totally remember. It is also one of the origin stories of the Beauty and the Beast story.
Yeah, it's Cupid and Psyche, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Psyche, she marries someone who says you can't look at me. We can only meet in the dark. And so she thinks that he's some sort of monster, and her sisters are like, he's probably a monster. You should just, at nighttime sometime, light a candle and look at him anyways. And there's, a prophecy. Almost all hero stories have some prophecy in them, and then people try to change the prophecy, which just makes prophecies come true.
Which is kind of also a big thing in Percy Jackson. There's prophecy in every book, and there's also a big prophecy for the whole series.
Mm-hmm. So she lights a candle, and she looks at her husband, who's beautiful and has white wings, and she realized that he's Cupid. And it had said in the prophecy that it was a monster that even the gods feared. And so it's even the gods fear Cupid because he can make them fall in love with a bush if he wanted. And then because she looked upon him, they can't be together anymore. She's broken the spell. And she goes through all these trials to prove herself to Aphrodite, who's the mother of Cupid, that she is worthy of him. And eventually they're together again. But her life sucks. She is, however, pregnant while she does all her trials. So sometimes you want to be okay, guys, man up. She was pregnant. So don't complain to me about your problems. You're my life is hard. But so, they retell myths that are relevant to the stories. And they're really funny books. And it's great the way, Percy frames them in a modern perspective, which makes them very funny to read. The books are very funny. Percy's a very funny character. And
he's so good.
He's very goofy.
And Annabeth is great.
ADD. So it's the main, two main characters. Percy's the son of Poseidon. Annabeth is the daughter of Athena. So it's got that similar sort of boy-girl thing you get often in more modern young adult books, where the boy is just kind of an average guy and the girl is smart, which is how things should be. And so, she's smart, and she's let's make plans. And he's let's attack monsters.
Well, so Percy Jackson, the series, is not super diverse. It's about as diverse as every other book series.
Yeah, the main characters are white.
Presumably. I mean, you can interpret them any way you want because people don't describe white people. But
no, that's true. You just assume.
But then he did this really great thing where he eventually incorporated more diverse characters, people of different races, and then gay characters, and then in the Magnus Chase books, which is the Norse mythology books, you have a gender fluid character.
And a Muslim.
And they're main characters.
But yeah, it is. You read the second series, The Heroes of Olympus, and it's like, boom, diversity.
Yeah.
Now, the Percy is still in it, and Annabeth, and, you know, they're white, and then there's Jason is white, but then there's a Chinese-Canadian.
Yes.
A girl who's black, a guy who's Hispanic, a girl who's Native American.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Nico is gay.
And then, like, you get to Trials of Apollo, and Apollo is, like, super, super bi. Which is, accurate to the myths.
Yeah, because gods loved anything. Trees, rocks,
anything.
Whatever. Cows, horses. They're, like, yeah, no good. They're like, I turned into a snake, and you're a snake, and you're a hot snake. Let's have this. Or, like, Zeus woos a woman as like a shower of gold.
Yeah.
And then she has a baby and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Just
but yeah, so
stuff.
it's great how it incorporates more diversity, which like Percy Jackson, I can't think of a good example right now, but it has characters who like I'm trying to think of, like, a name. Like, I remember that there's characters with names where it's like, well, clearly they're Hispanic or whatever.
Yeah, I can't, of course.
But they're not main characters. There's a lot of minor characters who are at the camp, and they do not spend most of their time at the camp.
They
but
don't.
Then, like,
because
it's mostly Percy, Annabeth, and Grover are the three main characters in the first series, and you kind of have these other characters that go on quests with them, but they're the main characters.
In the movie, Grover is black.
Yeah. Oh, and we haven't mentioned at all the Lightning Thief musical, which the soundtrack for that came out yesterday to purchase, and I haven't purchased it yet, but I do know that Percy's mom in the musical was a black woman.
Cool.
And Percy was still white, but, like, he's the child of a god.
You can be whatever. Apollo, in the Apollo's books, Apollo is made into a human, which happens in the myths, too. Mm-hmm. And he is meeting with some of his children, which is weird. But he mentions, you know, one of his children, and he's like, he's just as beautiful as his dad. And then Apollo's a very funny narrator as well. And he says, he's like, oh, can a male god have a child with a guy? Yeah. Whatever we want, we're gods.
I mean, yeah.
And that's pretty much how he says
Athena
it. He's like,
is like
sure.
Birthed out of Zeus's brain. So
interesting. I was rereading the myth of Athena, and it's like, so Zeus gets a prophecy, or Athena's mom gets a prophecy that like if Zeus and this woman have a son, he will overthrow Zeus.
Yes.
Which, you know, Zeus overthrew his dad, and Zeus' dad overthrew his. So he swallows Metis. He swallows her, and she's pregnant with Athena. So then eventually Athena busts fully formed with, like, a shield and a helmet on from Zeus's skull. He has
so that's
just,
right
like,
away
break his head open.
War, and because she's fully in armor, and also wisdom because she comes out of his head.
Yep, and...
Who is sewn onto Zeus's leg and is birthed
Dionysus.
From his leg. Okay.
Because Dionysus' is the only main god who was born a demigod.
Yes.
So his mom is mortal. And again, I remember these because they're in the Percy Jackson book, Greek Gods, which is hilarious. So Hera disguises herself, as she does, to go torture these poor women. And she convinces the mortal woman to get Zeus to show his true godly form. Yes. And you read in the Percy Jackson books all the time about their true godly form, which you can't look at because if you look at it, you'll, like, explode.
Yes.
And so Zeus does this because she makes him swear on the river Styx, which is, like, this binding oath you can't break unless you're Apollo, because he breaks it in his books. And that vaporizes her. And Zeus catches the baby and sews it into his leg so it can finish growing.
That's nice of him, I guess.
And then
Considerate.
Yeah. And then he gives it to, like, some nymphs and people to raise.
Yeah. And then
so
Dionysus invents wine, and everyone's like, whoa, this is some good stuff.
You must be a god.
Yeah, you should be a god now.
And so then Dionysus and his friends try to invade India.
Yeah.
The Dionysus story is... Because Dionysus is, like, the god of wine and partiers and stuff. But like his partiers, they party so hard that like they'll rip you apart.
Yeah.
It's very intense.
Like literally.
And again, these stories are all in the Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, and they're hilarious. They're really funny stories. And like Dionysus is kidnapped by pirates, and so the way Percy tells
the way that Percy Jackson tells stories is like how I tell stories, except he tells them in order.
Yeah. But it's funny because he's like, and Dionysus fell asleep and he woke up and they were pirates. And he was like, dude, you guys are pirates. Arr! And they're like, we're kidnapping you. And he's like, sweet. And they go on the ship and they're trying to tie him up. And he's like, can I walk the plank? Can we play pirate? And then he's like, I'm bored now. Take me back. Then that is really, literally how Dionysus talks in the story. And then they won't take him back. So then he turns them into dolphins. And he threatens to turn Percy into a dolphin all the time.
Yeah, because Dionysus is one of the gods that you see the most.
He's the camp director.
Yeah, in the books.
So you see Dionysus a lot. And it's great the way, they portray the gods because they're very human. They make mistakes.
Yeah.
And they mess up. And if Zeus could just keep it in his pants, none of the problems of ancient Greece would have ever happened.
Yeah. Apparently.
That was a much less formatted discussion, but I figured that's how it would be because we've read these books. And they're great books. And I say this again to the no one who's listening to this. They're great and you should read them. And they're short and they're easy to read and they're fun and it's funny. These teenagers go on these they're 12. First, they're not even teenagers. They go on silly adventures and they're just Percy's very funny. He's a very funny narrator. He's very he's just a boy and he's just like, cool, let's fight some stuff. It's very interesting, and very clever the way he's interpreted and worked these, 1,000-year-old stories into a modern day setting and how these different characters sort of redo similar sort of quests, but they're not exactly the same. And how you move these things into a American setting. Greek and Roman demigods of modern day. It's very cool. And I did think of another series we're not going to talk about, but Meg Cabot has a series of books. The first one I believe is called Abandon, which is a modern retelling of like Hades and Persephone. That's very cool.
Okay.
So that's just a cool thing too. So yeah, Greek mythology. I like Greek mythology, Roman mythology. It's very cool. Go on Wikipedia and read about stuff. There's probably better ways, but Wikipedia is just a really good starting point.
I think Rick Riordan has a list somewhere of his favorite sources. Google that up.
Probably.
Or just read the Percy Jackson books.
There's a Rick Riordan wiki.
Of course there is. There's a wiki for everything. Shall we talk some history?
Let's talk some history, Shannon. I love history.
So we decided to add a little segment where the sister who doesn't talk about the main topic just gives a little bit of pop culture history about like something that happened this month. So this is the month of July. So I didn't go very far back in history, but this is actually in a way related to what we were talking about, which is great. Captain America: The First Avenger was released in July in 2011. It's released on July 22nd, 2011. It's notable for being the final Marvel film before the Avengers, hence Captain America: The First Avenger. Although nobody calls it by the full name. Pretty sure everyone just says Captain America.
Also, in the comic books, Captain America was not one of the original Avengers?
No. He was added in, like, the second issue.
Yep.
They found him.
Nice.
No, but Ant-Man and the Wasp were original ones.
And the Hulk gets fired.
Yeah, in like the second one. And he's not an Avenger anymore. So, but yeah, so the movie was released in July 2011. It was the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that had Captain America. And he is, in many ways, like the main character of the Avengers, kind of him and Iron Man. And a fun thing that I found when I was looking up, like previous Captain America media. There was like a movie in the 40s, and then there was a movie in the 90s, which was the first full-length Captain America movie, and that was in 1990, and it was a complete critical failure, and actually was mostly just released to home video. But funnily enough, Captain America: The First Avenger was released July 22nd, 2011. Captain America 1990 was released in the U.S. on July 22nd, 1992.
Wow.
Which I thought was kind of funny. And I wonder if anyone realized that when they were releasing The First Avenger. But probably not. It was probably just like, a good day to release a movie. But I thought that was funny. Captain America: The First Avenger was not a critical failure. It was very successful, and I believe it has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty good in the grand scheme of things. Captain America, the 1990 movie, has an 8%, so it's not very good.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is our little history segment for this episode.
So my quiz question for you, Sharon,
yes,
is what is your favorite Greek god and why?
I guess Artemis. I like Artemis because I don't like men or romance for the most part. I would be cool. Well, I was going to say I'd be cool with living in the woods, but no, I wouldn't.
No.
I'm good with living indoors, but without other people, and shooting people who annoy me. So it's pretty much what she does. And I like animals, and she likes animals.
That is true.
I had a dream the other night that I got a dog. And I don't remember how it happened that I got a dog, but like Sarah finally allowed me to get a dog, but like somehow Mom and Dad did not know, and we were not telling them that I got a dog because they certainly don't want me to get a dog. I know that I shouldn't get a dog. I'm not like about to go get a dog, but it was just funny that I dreamed about it.
That is funny.
So, shall the audience, the people who are listening, also answer that question?
Yeah, let us know if you have a favorite Greek god, and or if you've read the Percy Jackson series, what god would you want to be your godly parent? I want to be a daughter of Hecate, who's the goddess of magic. I just want to have magic powers, and that seems like a way to get them. And
you say Hypnos. I do like to sleep.
You do like to sleep. Artemis doesn't have children.
Yes.
She's a virgin
I could be
and stuff.
A hunter of Artemis.
She is hunters. They do interact with each other. You'd have to just talk to girls.
Yeah, that's fine.
You'd be the oldest hunter of Artemis ever.
Yeah, by this point.
But that'd be fine because you could like drive them places.
Yeah.
Because Artemis, most of her followers are like young girls before they get interested in boys. Yeah. Luckily, Shannon just doesn't care about boys. And she's however old she is. So.
I'll be 23 this month.
Oh my God. That can't be real. Doesn't sound true.
So you could let us know about your godly parent or just your favorite god on our social media. We are on Twitter at twitter.com/popculturepie and on Tumblr at popculturepie.tumblr.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/popculturepie. I'm pretty sure I made that. Let me double check, because I remember last episode I had not finished making it. Yes, That is the URL, facebook.com/popculturepie. Or you can email us at popculturepiecast@gmail.com. And please donate to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/RSC, which stands for Remarkable Singular Curious, which is our little production company. And if you donate to us on Patreon, that will help us get the show onto like more accessible platforms other than YouTube, which is kind of not the greatest place to listen to podcasts. And you can also, depending on how much you donate, get like little bloopers, and we'll mention you in an episode. So yeah, thanks to Carrie and Jeff for being our 2 donors.
Woo!
Do you have a random fact about us to share?
Okay, random fact about us. I have lived in 7 states, and Shannon has lived in 6.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Not the exact same states.
No.
But a lot of the same ones, because we moved a lot as kids.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm still Colleen.
And this is Pop Culture Pie. Thanks for listening.
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
So
long, and thanks for all the fish.
It's a good one.